Well, good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk about international cooperation, which means that in the first instance, we actually have to listen to each other to figure out how we're going to cooperate. So I'm looking forward to that dialogue. But let me start by saying I cannot use any football metaphors because Fatih has already taken them. I thought about using cricket, but I realized it would go completely over the head of this audience, so we will stay with the facts on energy. But let me start by paying tribute to the leadership of Germany in the field of Energiewende, as exemplified by this forum. We're living at a time of remarkable transformation in global energy systems. And that required that we needed people who would take decisions, courageous decisions in the early stages, who would make the investments at high cost required to create a positive global future for us all. And I think Germany played that remarkable role in bringing renewables to a point where it has become a real possibility for the rest of the world, and that we are looking at the beginnings of a global Energiewende, starting from its home here in Germany. We had our first Energiewende transition conference session last year. It was a remarkable session, but I can already see from the level of participation this year and the level of energy how this is growing and going forward. 1 year in the field of renewables is a remarkably short period of time in the evolution of energy systems, but we are seeing dramatic changes already taking place. The business case for renewables is growing stronger, and several new records are being reached every year. We are about to launch our new renewable capacity numbers in a few days' time, but I can already tell you that what we are seeing is that last year alone, about 150 gigawatts of new renewable energy capacity was installed in 2015, setting a new absolute record year on year. And Asia is leading this with about 90 gigawatts added. Today, more than half of all new power generation worldwide, at least for the last 3 years, is renewable. The remarkable change. Costs of technology have also continued to drop dramatically. You will remember one of the things we discussed last year was the remarkable event that happened as a result of the reverse auction in Dubai, which brought the cost of solar PV to 5.84 US dollar cents per kilowatt hour. Remarkable numbers. We had not seen anything like that, and it created a little bit of a sensation in our discussion. I can tell you that the record for this year, which we have heard recently, for unsubsidized solar PV projects is in Peru at 4.8 US dollar cents a kilowatt hour, already a 20% decrease on the year before. And this is the trend that we are going to see continuously. We see all the headlines about how falling oil prices are going to be so consequential in the world of energy. We don't have the same attention being given to the fact that dramatic changes in the cost of renewables is what is going to be changing our world in the near future, and we are dedicated to taking that message out there. In terms of investments, figures for 2015 that are now available show that renewable energy investment grew another 22% throughout last year, reaching about $330 billion total. The share of renewables in the energy mix has also continued to grow, and here in Germany, Rainer Backe mentioned the 32% of electricity that was already reached in 2015. What I found remarkable was another number, that on July 25th, 2015, Germany's energy demand was met 78% on that day by renewable energy. And that puts into context what Boris Schucht was saying about the integration of variable renewables into the system and its feasibility. So we are seeing changes that are changing the frame of discussion about the energy evolution in the future. We're also seeing, in terms of international cooperation, the emergence of new agreements, new approaches. With the end of the Millennium Development Goals, the negotiation on the Sustainable Development Goals sets the agenda for international cooperation for growth and development for the future in the international community. For the first time, the Sustainable Development Goals include goals on energy, which are similar to Sustainable Energy for All goals. So I think that already begins to show how important energy is going to be as a part of our international cooperation framework for the future. And of course, we've talked about the implications of the Paris Agreement and the way forward in terms of decarbonization. I think the real success of the Paris conference, I don't want to be heretical, but we moved away from a cookie-cutter approach, which was a top-down, normative approach that everybody would have to sign up to the same standard. That ambition may still be there, but what we have achieved in Paris is the sense that everybody is a part of this solution, and that we have a practical agenda that different countries can implement in different ways to reach the same objective, but there is a political momentum behind decarbonization that we have not seen for a long time, and an end to the division we've always seen around the climate discussion. Forums like the G20 and the G7 are taking up renewable energy issues for the first time, and emerging economies like Morocco are showing what the positive future potentially can be. So we are at a moment of extraordinary opportunity. Policy frameworks, markets, and technologies are converging in an unprecedented manner to make the global Energiewende a reality. And within this framework, international cooperation can make a significant contribution by facilitating sharing of knowledge and information, the identification of best practices, and helping countries acquire the necessary capacities and skills to undertake this transition, which is very much at the heart of our work. But for international cooperation to succeed, we need a sound empirical basis on the basis of which we can take decisions. We cannot afford to sit in back rooms and crunch a few numbers and make general prognostications about what may happen. We need to know what is the exact situation and what are the decisions that we consequently need to make. So I'm very pleased that today in Berlin we'll be launching the second edition of our Remap 2030, which is the global roadmap to doubling the share of renewables in the global energy mix to 36% by 2030. In this latest effort, we have included 40 countries that account for 80% of energy use, and we have worked over the last 3 years with 100 experts from national governments with the precise data that they are using for decision making, really to map how we go forward. So the conclusions of Remap find that doubling the share of renewables is not only economically and technically feasible, but it would save us trillions annually, 15 times higher than the cost of the investment, thanks to avoided expenditures on climate change, environmental degradation, air pollution. Remap estimates that to achieve a doubling, we must see a 6-fold increase in annual deployment and an increase in the growth rate from 0.17% per annum to 1%. The findings of Remap are significant for global climate action. Doubling the share of renewables would deliver half the emissions reductions needed to keep emissions below 2 degrees centigrade. And combining this with energy efficiency measures could account for the entire amount of carbon reduction that we need to make. I was very pleased talking to my dear friend Fatih Birol in his heroic effort at the modernization of IEA to see that he is going to be concentrating on the issue of efficiency. Efficiency and renewables are two sides of the same coin, and our cooperation in the future between IRENA and IEA on the interface of renewables and efficiency and what that means for carbon, I think is going to be something that will create a roadmap for how we can do this effectively and from an efficient economic perspective. Remap outlines that the solutions and actions needed today to accelerate the transition to a sustainable energy future. It shows that progress in the power sector has been remarkable, but that to reach broader sustainability objectives, more action is needed in the transport, heating, and cooling sectors, and with all sources of renewable energy. So we have before us a remarkable transition that has begun to take place in the world of energy. We are moving under the compulsion of decarbonization to actually adopt an agenda of empowerment. I think the most fundamental change that we are seeing is that we have moved from the situation where we used to say that to meet environmental or carbon targets, you need to produce less, you need to use less, you need to consume less. It was an agenda of limitation. We now see, through the introduction of renewable energy technologies and the transition of energy, that we actually have a positive agenda for change ahead of us. An agenda related to investment, to growth, to employment generation. I think it was Sigmar Gabriel who mentioned the employment of 300,000 people in renewable energy in Germany, as opposed to 30,000 who were in the nuclear sector. We see there are, last year, about 9.2 million people worldwide involved in renewable energy, direct and indirect employment. And we are projecting through Remap that if we are successful in doubling the share of renewables by 2030, that share of employment will grow to 24.4 million. And you can see that in a growth-constrained and employment-constrained world, where the options for the younger generation represented by the school that we saw earlier are beginning to close, we have to look for positive avenues for growth while creating a sustainable future for us all.